Okay, so I know I want to use this, but I need to think about, what kind of designs I want here. Maybe I'll leave it very kind of geometric. Um, Maybe that means I want to kind of smooth out this cone a little bit. The wooden tools are nice for doing that, especially like the smoother part or the handles of the wooden tools, because I can kind of polish this surface. You want to think a little bit before you start really kind of digging in. So that shouldn't stop you from, coming up with an idea, but um, I do want to think about what I'm going to do with this before I do it. I like this whole spiral idea. Um, I like the diagonal lines, so I think I'm going to kind of continue an idea with the diagonal lines and maybe make some marks kind of coming out from that corner and just kind of using my wooden tool to kind of make some lines that I will work within. And I'm going to use the loop tool to carve out some of those lines. So the nice thing about clay at this leather stage is it's pretty satisfying to kind of carve into. So you can kind of pull up a whole curl of clay, little ribbon of clay. And when you're carving, obviously you can't really put that back, but you can still soften the edges and change it up a little bit. So done some carving here. I've got some indentations, so now I can kind of work with what I've got here. Maybe I want to kind of repeat a similar kind of design coming up from this corner. So I'm just going to mark it lightly with my wooden tool and then carve some lines out of there. So remember, you are making something that's handmade. It's not supposed to be perfect. It's not supposed to look like it's made by a machine. It should look, handmade. I kind of like that little kind of ray thing that I've got going on up there. So I think I'm going to put some of that into these. Maybe make these into some kind of little arrows. And that kind of sets up a little design for me so I can dig those in deeper. And I think now that I see some of these lines happening here, I think I want to um, incorporate some of these lines actually into the cylinder part of this. So um, let me straight down the middle. Do a little bit of carving here too. And when I'm doing this, I'm using my whole arm, so it kind of pulls a straighter line. But again, it doesn't have to be perfect. I've got some sharp edges on some of this, so I'm going to run my finger back over it to kind of soften those edges a little bit. I think I'm going to continue some of this stuff a little further out than where it was originally. So experiment a little bit. I think I'm going to look for some places to maybe stamp in some texture. I did talk about that. So in addition to carving, you don't want to carve too deep. You're just kind of carving on the surface. You want to make sure you don't carve like through all the way through. But I think I will do a little bit of stamping on this edge here. My stuff here is pretty linear, so I've got this little spring that's embedded in some clay. I'm going to use the spring along the rim here to make some little straight lines. Straight line texture. And then it's always good to repeat things in other places. So I'm going to repeat some of that texture over here. And I'm making sure that my slab is supported, it's not running off the edge of the board here. And make these a little bit more defined now that I know where they are. Okay, I will tell you, like, first semester, I saw people come up with way more complex designs than I was coming up with my examples, and I hope you guys do the same. You can, repeat things, you can carve different directions once you've got like one thing set, maybe I'll repeat some of these V's along this direction. Repeat this kind of idea here on this edge. We've got like that kind of up and down arrow look along that edge. I think I'm going to continue along the edge of the cone, kind of working my way around. But be really careful with this. This is going to get dry fast. I do see that I want to come back in here now that this is a little bit drier and work on cleaning this up, smoothing this stuff out a little bit before I continue with my design. So I'm going to come in here and get this a little bit more cleaned up. Some of my fingernail prints out of there. So I'm going to continue with the line and the arrow design going around this cone. Okay, so we're just going to today work on carving some things in, testing out some patterns, and working on this while it's in the leather to leather hard stage. It's mine right now is closer to leather hard. It's not very flexible, so I could bend this a little bit if I wanted to, this flat piece. I can bend it up a little bit. You can see that I can flex that a little bit. I could maybe turn this up a little bit if I'm worried about those points, but it's not extremely flexible at this point, okay? So be gentle with it, don't go too far. But like I said, you can bend it a little bit. I'm gonna try to shape mine just a little bit. And kind of keep that curve wrapping around. So it's still flat back here. It'll still go flat against the wall, but it's just got a little bit more bend to it. And honestly, those little lines that I put in here actually kind of probably help make that curve a little bit. So before I wrap this up, instead of having my support in here, I'm going to put a little bit of support underneath here. I'm going to make sure it's all sitting on the board so it is supported. I don't have anything hanging off that's going to get broken. And I'm going to wrap this up again. And it can be a little bit looser so it starts to dry a little bit. Okay, so once you kind of finish your design, you can wrap it a little bit looser and let it start to dry. But we have to be careful that things don't get too dry and too fragile before they come to me. So make sure that you're still wrapping it pretty tightly. Okay.